Question number 4, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister for Economic Development, what impact has his business growth agenda had on Nuplex Industries, Solid Energy, Kawerau and Tiwai Point, and how many job cuts have been announced there over the last 2 months?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, the Government's business growth agenda is undertaking initiatives in skills, innovation, natural resources, capital, infrastructure and market access to assist all New Zealand firms, including those named by the member, to be more competitive on the world stage after our tradable sector declined through the latter half of the last decade. Of course, the impact on individual firms at any point of time depends on the international state of the industries in which they operate. Job losses at the firms mentioned by the member are, of course, a matter of public record.
Order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, rather than choosing to answer what was a quite straight question, how many job cuts have been announced in specific industries or companies in the last 2 months, the Minister chose instead to give an answer about a previous government, or an allegation about a previous government. If he had that information, he might have sought advice. The question was on notice, and he could have answered the question that was actually given.
Order. I think the member has some grievance in that the Minister said that the Minister was asked about how many job cuts have been announced there in the last 2 months. I don't think saying it's on the public record is actually that informative for the House. I would ask the Minister, if he has that information, please to tell the House. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I do have some information to hand. My understanding is, according to media reports, the numbers are 80, 440, 120 and 100. And of course they're contrasted by recent announcements on the positive side by companies such as Xero, Orion, Tate, Methanex, The Warehouse, Supermarket...
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
Yeah, now this Minister's trifling with question time. He deliberately didn't provide the answer, despite the fact that it was on notice. He had the information provided to him by the Ministry, and he had it at hand, and now he's using the second opportunity to...
Order. The member's criticising... Order. The member resume his seat. The member is criticising the Minister. It's up to the Speaker to deal with whether or not the Minister has answered the question. I've done that. I made it clear to the Minister that I was not satisfied with the answer provided to the question on notice. The Minister did go on to put some context around the answer, the figures he was giving, and that's not unreasonable, lest a false impression be created. And Ministers naturally have some licence to put context around answers, but I think he had made his point sufficiently. The Honourable... Point of order, the Honourable David.
The way the Minister
Parker
has been allowed to answer this question effectively says that he has 2 long-winded answers in respect of one primary, when he should have only had the opportunity to answer once and had done it properly then.
Order. I invite the member to read the question carefully. It asks, what impact has his business growth agenda had on these... Well, if the member read the question carefully, he'd realise that actually it asks an opinion. Because there's no fact about, no one can actually establish any particular facts about the impact of government's policy on those particular businesses. So the question seeks an opinion. And I invite the member to reflect on that, and the Minister gave an opinion and answer. The piece of the question that sought facts was the last part of the question, and that's why I required the Minister to advise the House of that information, because that's the part that sought the facts. And I just invite the member to think through the question.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given that the Minister has revealed that he does have the information to hand, I'd invite him, if it is an official document that he's quoting from, if he would please table that.
No, order. If the member listened, he would recollect the Minister was quoting from newspaper articles. Supplementary question, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, why did the Minister say that the Spring Creek layoffs are because, quote, coal prices are on a severe roller coaster around the world, when Bathurst's Denniston mine faces exactly the same world coal prices, yet he thinks that one's economic?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to explain that for the member. There's about 2 or 3 reasons why the cost of production at the Denniston field, and in fact the Buller field more generally, where Denniston and Stockton are both located, is because the coal seams are close to the surface and run laterally, and also because they're open cast mines, and as I understand it, there's not a lot of methane gas, as distinct from the grey fields, which are underground mines by definition. They have very complex geology and are quite difficult. So you have a production cost at the Denniston mine which is much lower than the production cost at the Spring Creek mine, which means that the different mines are much more economic at different prices, and I understand that the private sector investors are more than ready to make their investment in Denniston, provided, of course, they get the opportunity to do so.
Damien knows that. Mr. Speaker, in light of the answer the Minister has just given, could he please clarify whether he believes it is more in the national interest to pursue open cast coal mining on conservation land, or to extract the maximum long-term value from an existing deep mine shaft at Spring Creek?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I think the member is actually recommending that in lieu of jobs that would be successful in the open cast mine, he would prefer the government to subsidise an uneconomic...
Order. No, the member's question was fairly clear, and he wasn't. And the minister, what he was asking the minister was whether he considers it more to be in the public interest to extract coal from an open cast mine on conservation land, if I remember correctly, compared with extracting from deep, whatever the correct term is, existing deep extraction, low impact mining. And they asked the minister for it's an opinion he's seeking, whether in the minister's opinion which is the preferable in the public interest, and that's what the minister should focus on. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I believe it is preferable in the public interest to encourage companies that can have profitable operations to hire workers from the West Coast to succeed in the mining industry as an alternative to attempting to subsidise mines that have proved to be not economic at current world prices. Absolutely, and if the member doesn't think so, then he needs to take the word economic off the title Economic Development Spokesman.
Order. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, in light of the answer that the Minister has just given, can he explain to the House why he maintains that the Spring Creek layoffs are simply the result of market forces when Solid Energy's own documents show that they are a deliberate part of a strategy readying the company for sale, a privatisation process which is being driven by his own government? And why, Mr. Speaker, did that minister not do the miners and their families the courtesy of even reading the recovery proposal which they submitted to his government?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit nonplussed here. Yeah. So we've got he's basically saying that a company that's got $300 million worth of debt and has lost $100 to $120 million on this mine should somehow keep it operating, and yet Labor are not stepping up to join the government's proposal to say to the objectors of the other mine, which is economic, that they should perhaps drop their objections so they can have actually economic jobs on the West Coast. It's just unbelievable.
Well, here we are.
Point of order, the Honourable Damien O'Connor. Point of order has been called.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a document called Solid Energy Design Pack, dated the 29th of August 2012, that states very clearly that the key principles of the proposed structure for Solid Energy are to, in summary, Mr. Speaker, meet the government's objectives of its mixed ownership model.
Leave us sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. The order, the Honourable David Cunliffe. Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. No, Order. I say to both, well, mainly the National Party front bench, I want to hear the Honourable David Cunliffe's supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, has he delayed the release date of the Natural Resources Business Growth Agenda report because after the PR failure of the last two releases, officials have been tasked with urgently adding new content? And if he denies that the release date has been delayed, then when is the scheduled release date?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
I mean, I'm sorry, you're a train spotter, Mr. Cunliffe. You really are.
Order. Order. The member, I think I can anticipate the member's point of order. That is not the way. I say to the minister, that is not the way to assist with good order in the House, or not the way for a minister to answer a question. He's been asked about the release date of a certain report, and the minister should answer the question. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, the reason I referred to him in that manner is there's nothing about that supposition that's correct.
The point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, despite the minister's inimitable style, the question was quite straight. It asked him whether the release date had been delayed, and if not, asked him what the scheduled release date was. He's denied it was delayed. He has not addressed that part of the question, Mr. Speaker.
In fairness, for the supplementary question, the minister does only have to answer one part, but if the minister knew when there was a release, if the minister had the information on the release date, it would be helpful. He's not prepared to release that date.
Question on notice. Mr. Speaker, the question on notice was what was the impact of his business growth agenda on a number of entities, including Solid Energy. The relevant report, we are told, being the Natural Resources chapter, it is therefore on notice for him to be asked about that. It is perhaps a surprise to the House. The minister has no idea the release date of his own key strategy.
The question did not. There's no reason why the minister should have anticipated that specific question about a report, given that primary question. Question number 5, Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister